It is so exciting whenever a living composer is in our midst, especially when that composer is a member of your choir and congregation. Thank you, Steve. Oh, amazing. Antiphonal bells. Amazing job, bell choir. Thank you. Our reading this morning comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 20. It happened that one of the 12, Thomas, nicknamed Didymus or Twin, was absent when Jesus came. The other disciples kept telling him, "We've seen Jesus." Thomas's answer was, "I'll never believe it without putting my finger in the nail marks and my hand into the spear wound." On the 8th day, the disciples were once more in the room, and this time, Thomas was with them. Despite the locked doors, Jesus came and stood before them, saying, "Peace be with you." Then to Thomas, Jesus said, "Take your finger and examine my hands. Put your hand into my side. Don't persist in your unbelief, but believe." Thomas said in response, "My Savior and my God." Jesus then said, "You believe because you've seen me. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." This is the gospel of love and grace. Thanks be to God. Just over a week ago, the crew of Artemis II splashed down in the Pacific after 10 days in space. Unlike the last moon mission 54 years ago, we didn't have to wait for newscasts and newspapers to show us the mind-altering awe, or what the Artemis crew would come to call moon joy. I love that phrase. We witnessed with the astronauts an Earth set, watching Earth dip below the lunar horizon while over 252,000 miles from home. A mere 1.3 light seconds, the farthest humanity has ever reached into an observable space 93 billion light years across. 4 remarkable humans experienced what is known as the overview effect, that take-your-breath-away phenomenon caused by seeing Earth from space that radically alters astronauts' perspective on life itself. Accompanying this perspective shift was a profound sense of humility. Victor Glover, the first black astronaut to reach the moon and Artemis's pilot, said, "In all this emptiness, you have this oasis, this beautiful place we get to exist together." I think as we go into Easter, thinking about all the cultures of the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing, and that we've got to get through this together. Christina Koch, the first woman to reach the moon, echoed, "Planet Earth, you are a crew. We will always choose Earth. We will always choose each other." And then Jeremy Hansen, as if he knew I'd be preaching this sermon, said, "It's almost like seeing living proof that our purpose is to find joy." Now, imagine for a moment these eyewitness stories were all we had of the event. No photos, satellite-enabled video calls, or on-demand news. Now imagine that the only means of remembering and carrying on this story for the next 60 years was to retell it and retell it until finally it is written down in the year 2086. That is the story of the Gospel of John. A community who, after 60 years following Jesus' death, keeping alive a story about new life from death, finally writes down their experience of Jesus and his ongoing presence in their lives. Now, John is the only gospel writer of the 4 to describe what it was like just over a week since Jesus' death. The disciples are locked tightly in a capsule-like room, living the breathlessness of grief and fear. Jesus, apparently undeterred by locks, enters and breathes on them, saying, "Peace be with you." It is a restorative moment, a moment of recreation, and it allows them to breathe again. This spaciousness is a gift for all of them except Thomas. He's been MIA for a week when suddenly he reappears and is asked to believe the impossible. For much of Christendom today that reduces this vibrant faith to a one-time decision to believe in Jesus, doubting Thomas, as he came to be known, of course, is the example not to be followed. Don't doubt, just believe. But we're going to follow Thomas's example today. I love Thomas, in part because he reveals even those right there struggled to believe the whole thing, and because the only real growth I've ever experienced spiritually came from my own doubts and questions. These led to a deeper, more thoughtful and loving faith, a newfound trust in the nearness of the divine, and a love affair with the earth, saturated with divine presence. It's why my all-time favorite quote from another more recent Thomas Merton, is, "If the you of 5 years ago doesn't think the you of today is a heretic, you are not growing spiritually." I also love Thomas Didymus because of what the story actually says about him. And I'm grateful to Barbara Brown Taylor for this interpretation. Thomas wasn't any less trusting than the rest. Remember when Mary Magdalene ran from the tomb to tell Peter and John it was empty? They didn't believe her either. They ran to see for themselves. And when Jesus came back that same night to the house where the disciples were hiding, they believed because they saw for themselves. They had evidence, Thomas had hearsay. So he wasn't trying to decide if he believed Jesus had risen from the dead. He was trying to decide if he believed what the other disciples were telling him. In other words, his trust issues weren't with Jesus, they were with his companions. But it goes deeper than that. And the clue is in Thomas's own words. "Unless I see and touch the mark of the nails, touch my hand to his side, I will not believe." Thomas wants to touch the places where the Jesus he knew so well was hurt, where the spear went into his side even after he was dead. What if Thomas isn't holding out proof that Jesus came back from all that? What if he is holding out for proof that Jesus hasn't come back separated from all that? What if Thomas longs to see that the risen one is the same one who died, who has not come back all healed up and good as new, but who has returned to his friends with visible evidence that he will never leave what is most human about him behind? If that's a possibility, then Thomas isn't looking for physical proof of Jesus' resurrection. He is looking for existential proof that the one who is raised is the same who was damaged beyond all human repair. Thomas longs for evidence that this Jesus knows everything there is to know about the worst kind of breathlessness and will never discount it, neither here nor in the hereafter. Otherwise, what should Thomas actually believe? That Jesus' new life has nothing to do with his old? That faith means seeing the wounded world as a passing illusion? Thomas isn't having it. He wants to see the marks on Jesus' body, to reach out his real hand and touch Jesus' real wounds. Only then will he believe that it mattered, that Jesus' resurrected life meant something for every life, no matter how hurt or scared, no matter how doubtful or questioning. That's a faith I can embrace, that we are embraced through life's fullness. A faith more at home in mystery than in unprovable certainty. A faith baptized in humility and knowing how much we don't know. And from that posture, nothing must be defended because nothing ultimately threatens it. Humility is open to conversation, challenge, and reconsideration, reminding us that none of us holds the whole truth, but that each of us holds some of it. There is a Tibetan prayer, said the Dalai Lama in the Book of Joy. Whenever I see someone, may I never feel superior. From the depth of my heart, may I be able to truly appreciate the other person in front of me. Archbishop Desmond Tutu echoed, no one is a divine accident. Each of us, made in this divine image, reveals some hue of the divine life. Both Tutu and the Dalai Lama are insistent that humility is essential to any possibility of joy. When we have wider, nimbler perspectives, we have a natural understanding of our place in the great sweep of all that was, is, and will be. This naturally leads to humility and the recognition that as human beings, we can't solve everything or control all aspects of life. We need others. And all our vulnerabilities and frailties and limitations are those regular reminders. We are wired for interdependence and mutual support. This humble joy helps us resist individualism's lie, that to lean into our need for each other somehow makes us weak. It helps us resist belief systems thriving in the name of Christianity today that twist and exploit faith and use it for its own selfish and destructive ends, or that justify harm against common enemies it has defined. Humble joy helps us resist the lie of white Christian nationalism that claim that this world is full of inferior people to be dominated rather than full of God's beloved children to be cared for, uplifted, and loved. If anyone claims that salvation means the former and not the latter, know right away their true God's names: power and control. And that God's game is zero-sum, says Heather McGee, and rooted in white supremacy. It spreads the lie that if people of color get more rights or receive more resources, that means less for me and mine. This is the lie at the root of immigrant hatred today and the great replacement theory. And it's making impossible a more meaningful quality of life for all of us. It only cares about its own perpetuation, its own compound interest. The sacred earth and humanity's sacred souls become mere collateral damage. Humble joy resists the lies. It insists that a living faith is a growing faith, a questioning faith, willing to update its beliefs when those beliefs are discovered to cause harm or cause anything but more love for God and neighbor. It is so human to favor the comfort of conviction over the discomfort of doubt. But living faith dares us to take that risk, to open locked doors that cage in beliefs no longer serving us or others, thereby making room for a living presence that wakes us up, speaks peace to us, and helps us breathe deeply some new life where deeper, more thoughtful, more loving, faithful ways await our embodiment. Claire and her staff, an amazing group of mentors, have done an exceptional job nurturing that kind of spacious spiritual exploration among these brilliant youth confirmed today. They, like Mary and Thomas of old, are examples of living faith, humbly holding space to grow while sharing the good news of all they've learned and seen so far. A week ago Friday, Artemis II splashed down on Earth, as its crew continued to do the very same. The scene reminded me that the word humility comes from the Latin word for earth or soil, humus. Humility literally brings us back down to earth. And that return, or likely many returns throughout our lifetimes, is for our joy. I hope we'll never cease sharing what we've learned in the depths of soil or beyond the heights of clouds, for it might just be someone else's reason for joy. Blessed are you who've not yet seen the new life for which you hope, and yet still believe. Amen.